Hello beautiful people. In this guide I will review all British prop bombers in the regular tech tree. Hope you enjoy. All the bombers will be reviewed in the following manner. First I will make some short remarks about the bomber. Then there will be a pros and cons section, followed by a look at the bomb load and armament, and lastly there will be some pew pew and final remarks. The individual bombers will have timestamps so you can jump between them. In general, you can describe the British bombers like this. They have very good bomb loads, are mostly heavy bombers, have mostly rifle caliber defensive armament, all have self-sealing fuel tanks, and very little armor protection. Starting out at battle rating 1.0, we have the iconic Swordfish. This old bomber / torpedo bomber of course has some obvious flaws, but can still be a very effective bomber. Let's look at some pros and cons. Starting out with the pros. Bomb load. Surprisingly enough, the Swordfish has a good bomb load for this type of aircraft, but more on that later. Turns on a dime. With a full bomb load, the turn time of the Swordfish is just over 16 seconds, and once the bombs are gone, we are down to 13 seconds, which means that you can outturn even biplane fighters. Armament. This bomber has a forward-firing light machine gun. It's not much, but still makes it capable of destroying ground targets and other aircraft. Whip. You can pretty much turn on war emergency power as soon as you spawn in and just leave it on. The engine on the Swordfish does not overheat. Low speed handling. As you would guess, the plane has excellent handling, especially at lower speeds, but again, everything is low speed with a Swordfish. And some of the cons. Slow. Building on the last pro. Of course, everything you do is slow with the Swordfish. Max speed with a bomb load is around 230 km an hour, so even getting over a base in air battles takes time. But in a dive you can get to around 400 km an hour before it gets too interesting. Armament. You only have a light machine gun for defense, and it is not terribly effective. Considering what other nations start off with bomber-wise, this is pretty underwhelming. Armor protection. And of course, the Swordfish has no armor protection at all. As mentioned, the Swordfish has a pretty good bomb load with either 4 or 6 250 pound bombs, or 2 250 pound bombs and 2 500 pound bombs. The Swordfish is, as a bonus, able to drop the bombs one at a time, so you can get up to 6 bomb releases. It can also carry a torpedo in case you want to reenact some Bismarck torpedo runs. So when you consider the bombing platform, this is actually pretty nice. For defense, the rear gunner has a single Vickers K 7.7mm light machine gun at his disposal. The rate of fire is 950 rounds a minute, and he has 600 rounds of ammo. For the Vickers K, the best build to use is the universal build. With the build you're getting armor piercing and immediate action incendiary bullets. Immediate action incendiary meaning that you'll get more pretty sparkly effects when you hit something, and an increased chance of setting stuff on fire. For this type of turret, the guidances are actually pretty good. Horizontal guidance is ± 90 degrees, vertical guidance is -5, and a very generous +85 degrees. Offensively, the pilot is able to use a 7.7mm Vickers E machine gun. Rate of fire is 900 rounds a minute, and you have 600 rounds at your disposal. And again here, use a universal build. It is not quite the same as on the Vickers K, it is actually better with a regular armor-piercing incendiary bullet. While you of course can use the Swordfish in air battles to destroy bases and ground targets with, it is in my opinion not the best way of using the aircraft. It requires pretty much your entire bomb load to destroy a base with, and in case you are on an operations map, that is not even enough. Combine that with a slow flying speed, and it can become a little boring to use the Swordfish in this role. Once baited, the place to be for the Swordfish is in mixed battles. You are still quite slow even at the lowest battle rating, but you have a good bomb load, are highly maneuverable, and have excellent low speed flying characteristics, making it easy to deliver a bomb precisely. One bomb is enough to destroy a tank, but for certain tanks like the French B1s I usually drop 2. The best way to use the Swordfish is to wait for the right moment, then fly over the battlefield, drop a bomb or 2, and then head out again to the outskirts of the area and just loiter. Look out for enemy planes and SPAAGs, keep a decent altitude, and then dip into the area again for another bombing run. Rinse and repeat. Do not loiter directly over the map. You're much too slow, making it easy for everything with a gun capable of some elevation to be a problem for you.
A little more effort, and victory will surely be ours.
The Hampden is a large step up from the Swordfish. You here have the first proper bomber in the British tech tree. The Hampden also provides a hint about the rest of the British bomber tree with its good bomb load. In game we have 2 models, both a battle rating 1.7. The differences are found in the bomb bay. The TB version, torpedo bomber, can carry a slightly larger bomb load of regular bombs and, you guessed it, a torpedo. Let's look at some pros and cons. Some of the pros: bomb load. The Hampden has a strong bomb load for the battle rating, but more on that in a bit. Flight characteristics. The bomber performs well with a top speed of over 420 km/h empty at 4000 meters, wings rip at a decent 500 km/h, and flap speeds are good with 388 and 359 km/h for combat and takeoff flaps. The landing flap speed is pretty low though, with only 210 km/h, and the landing gear tears at 225 km/h, so that is something to look out for. Turn time is good with around 26 seconds. The Hampden also handles well at low and normal speeds. Armament. The bomber has a single offensive machine gun, and the number of defensive armaments is a big step up from the Swordfish, and more on that later. Fuselage. The Hampden has a very slim fuselage and tail section. That helps defensively because it clearly presents a smaller target to hit from a distance. Web. You can use web for a long period of time before the engine starts to overheat. And some of the cons: slow-ish. Don't expect more than 350 km/h with a full bomb load. You will accelerate to just below 400 km/h at 4000 meters, but probably not before you are over the enemy bases. Large wings. When you get hit in the very large wings, the Hampden has a nasty tendency to start burning right away, And sadly it is quite rare that you are able to put out the fires, leading to, in most cases, the loss of the bomber. Armament. As a large con, the coverage of the turrets are very poor. Armor protection. The Hampden has 2 places where you find armor protection, and neither makes much sense, to me anyhow. There is an armor plate behind the dorsal gunner, which means it does nothing to protect him from attacking planes, but it can protect the pilot, I guess. The second plate is in front top of the fuselage between the nose gunner and the pilot, and it serves no protection unless you're being dived upon from an 80-degree angle. The strength of this bomber, like all British bombers, lies in the bomb bay. For the BR you can deliver a good bomb load at decent speeds. The smallest bomb load is 6 250-pound bombs, and the largest is 4 1,000-pound bombs and 2 500-pound bombs. With that bomb load you can around your battle rate and destroy 2.5 bases on a normal map. Unfortunately, with the largest bomb load, the 2 500-pound bombs are located under the wings, which means parasitic drag, and even worse, they're the last bombs to be dropped. If you fancy try sinking ships, you can do that as well with the torpedo. Defensively, the turrets on the Hampden are some of the worst I have seen. Starting off with the dorsal turret, the gunner has access to twin Vickers K machine guns. That part is pretty good. The bad part are the guidances. Horizontal guidance is only plus minus 25 degrees, and that is awful. Equally awful is the vertical guidance with only plus 40 degrees, so there's a very limited window of where the gunner can be used. So here we're looking at the only ventral turret in the entire British bomber tech tree, but unfortunately it's pretty bad. Again, the good part is the twin Vickers K machine guns, and the bad part are the guidances. Horizontal guidance is immediately plus minus 25 degrees, and just as bad, vertical guidance is only minus 20 degrees. Yuck. But the cake goes to the nose turret. It can't get much worse than this. It is basically useless. Here we find the Vickers K machine gun with a horizontal guidance of awful plus minus 6 degrees and equally awful plus minus 18 degrees vertically. Why even bother with the gun here? The gunner might as well give the attacking plane the finger and get a better demoralizing effect on the enemy pilot than the machine gun ever will. For moral support, the Hampden also has a machine gun the pilot can use. You only have half the ammo the pilot on the Swordfish had, but I guess it can be useful in a pinch. As mentioned, the strength of the Hampden is in the bomb load. Although you are somewhat slow, you will have enough time to deliver all of your bombs before enemy planes reach your altitude. Then it's about putting the Hampden in a shallow dive and return for more bombs. There's a shift in the bombing side after you drop the last 1,000-pound bomb. I guess because of the differences in drag, the bombs do not have the same glide path. So do not drop the last 1,000-pound bomb together with the 500-pound bombs, or you will overshoot with them. Also, beware with the landings. The gear and landing flap speeds are low, and you need to be careful with the braking. There are two light bombers also at battle rating 1.7 I want to mention, the British Blenheim and the Australian Beaufort. They were both designed by the British Bristol Company, and the Beaufort is an improvement over the Blenheim, but not in all regards. In War Thunder they are not found in the bomber branch, but for whatever reason in the strike aircraft branch of the British tech tree. They however both function as bombers with regular bombing sights. They share very limited bomb loads with either two 500-pound bombs or four 250-pound bombs. The Beaufort can also carry a torpedo. Roughly speaking, the Blenheim is the lighter and more nimble one with a single machine gun the pilot can use, but without a defensive armament, while the Beaufort is the heavier one with better defensive armament but no offensive weapon and worse handling overall. You can get some pretty nice camos for the Blenheim, but none for the Beaufort. And now, back to a regularly scheduled programming. At battle rating 1.7 and 2.0, we find the mighty Sunderland, at least in size. Since the battle rating 1.7 Sunderland marks the 5th bomber at that battle rating, I think we can move on and review the later BR 2.0 model. The Mark V sitting at battle rating 2.0 has slightly more powerful engines and better defensive armament. Let's look at some of the pros and cons. Some of the pros: armament. The Sunderland is a huge flying gunship with 7 turrets and offensive armament as well, but more on that later. Hydroplane. The Sunderland can land both in water and, not as graciously, on land. Bomber spawn. The bomber is the first in the British tech tree that is considered a long-range bomber, and with that comes the benefit of high-altitude bomber spawn. Dead space. Although the Sunderland is pretty large, there's also a lot of empty space in it, meaning that the bomber can take a lot of hits with barely anything happening if a critical component is not hit. Flight characteristics. The Sunderland handles pretty well all considering. Top speed is 400 km an hour at 4200 meters. Flap speeds are also good. Turn time says 35 seconds, but it does feel more nimble than that. But of course it acts like it looks. Everything it does is pretty slow. And some of the cons. Bomb load. The Sunderland was designed for long-range maritime patrols and secondarily as a bomber, and that shows. The Sunderland has very limited bomb load options. Huge target. As briefly mentioned, the Sunderland is huge, which means it is also easy to hit, so the chances for you not attracting attention are pretty low. Wings. The rift speed of the wings is pretty low with only 400 km an hour, and you need to be careful doing high-speed turns and dives. There is a chance that you will either lose the pontoons or, much worse, the wings. Armor protection. The Sunderland has no armor protection at all, so a quick burst to the cockpit will send you back to the hangar. A quick look at the bomb bay, because that's all what is needed. You can either carry 4 500-pound bombs or 8 250-pound bombs, and that's about it. Starting off with the first proper rear turret in the British bomber tree, we here find a lot of improvements and a lot of firsts. The Vickers K machine guns have been switched out with the 7.7mm Browning machine guns. The Brownings have a higher rate of fire and are more effective. Horizontal guidance is a very nice ±88 degrees, and vertical guidance is also impressive with -45 degrees and +60 degrees. So for the battle rating, the quad machine guns are very effective. Next we have the dorsal turret. Here we also find some Browning machine guns. The turret can rotate 360 degrees, and vertical guidance is a very impressive -38 and +75 degrees. We also have 4 different ventral gun positions, and here we also have a first, the first time we see a heavy machine gun in the proper British bomber tree. The rate of fire for the M2 is 750 rounds per minute, and the gunner has 500 rounds of ammo at his disposal. And also here we find very good guidances for this kind of position. Horizontal guidance is ±55 degrees, and vertical guidance is -45 and +60. The second set of ventral gun positions are equipped with the Vickers K machine gun. Here we also have good guidances. Horizontal guidance is plus minus 55 degrees. Vertical guidances here is not as good as the other ventral position with minus 17 and plus 40 degrees. The nose gunner has access to two 7.7mm Browning machine guns, and he has very good guidances. Horizontal guidances are pretty amazing, plus minus 95 degrees, and vertical guidances are also good, minus 45 and plus 60. So except from directly below and behind the Sunderland, the gunners have very few blind spots. Last but not least, the pilot has also access to some firepower, and this is much better than the Swordfish at the Hampden. Here we find 4 Brownings, and they can become very useful in air battles. While I am glad that the Sunderland is in the game, its usefulness as a bomber is limited. It has a light bomb load, only good enough to destroy a single base. On the plus side, you will always be able to drop your bombs. No enemy fighter will reach your altitude before you're over the target. You can of course also use it in naval battles. Here you have the added benefit of being able to capture points. A way to have fun with the Sunderland is to use it as a gunship. You can search out other bombers and attack them with either your defensive or offensive weaponry. Both works. Any fighter should be worried attacking the Sunderland. Your only real weak point is behind and below you, so you should avoid letting them attack you from that angle. For ground lobby, I would just loiter outside the center of the map and see what happens. You can either dip in to drop bombs or strafe SPAGs or open top tank destroyers. There should always be plenty of attention from enemy fighters, so you will never get bored. So although the Sunderland is not very effective as a pure bomber, it certainly makes up for it as a gunship, and I'm very happy that it is included in the game.
The enemy is getting closer to victory.
In War Thunder we have 4 different Wellingtons ranging from battle rating 2.3 to 3.3. The differences lie in the defensive armament and the engines. Surprisingly enough, they all share the same bombload options, and that means that the Wellington at battle rating 2.3 is very powerful bombload wise. For this review, however, we are looking at the last Wellington, the Mark 10, sitting at battle rating 3.3. Let's look at some of the pros and cons. Some of the pros. Bombload. The Wellington has a good variety of bombloads, including a 4,000 pound bomb, but more on that later. Airframe. The Wellington can take a surprisingly amount of punishment before going down. Low speed handling. Below 300 km an hour, the Wellington behaves nicely and becomes responsive. Wing limits. The wings have a good speed with 530 km an hour, which is surprising. This means that you can, after delivering your bombs, put the Wellington into a good dive to get home faster, although you have to look out for the locking up at those speeds closer to the ground. Whip. You can use whip for a very long time before the engines turn red, and as soon as you are off whip, the engines cool down and you can whip again after a few seconds. And some of the cons. Flight characteristics. The max speed says over 400 km an hour, but realistically with a bomb load you won't see speeds over 350 km an hour flying level, and at battle rating 3.3 you can easily get caught heading towards bases, while you are a bit safer with the lower BR Wellingtons even though they're slower. The Wellington is also very heavy at speed, much heavier than it would seem for the size. It feels more like you're flying a 4-engine heavy bomber. Landing. You have to be careful with landings. If you hit the brakes too much you can land on your nose, but not enough to fully nose over though. Armament. The Wellington lacks a dorsal turret, which means that you are poorly defended from attacks from above, but more on that later. Armor protection. Only the pilot has some armor protection with his seat, the gunners have none. The bombloads vary from 10 250 pound bomb stock to the large 4,000 pound bomb. There are very good options for different tasks, from base bombing to destroying ground targets, also in mixed battles. The Wellington is furthermore one of the few bombers capable of carrying 2 torpedoes. The later Wellingtons have a very good rear turret with 4 7.7mm Brownings with a whopping 8,000 rounds total, which is pretty crazy. The horizontal guidance on the turret is an amazing plus-minus 100 degrees, and I don't remember seeing this before. Vertically you have a problem though. You can only elevate 30 degrees, and that combined with the lack of a dorsal turret makes the Wellington pretty much defenseless against fighters diving onto you. The depression of the turret is good with minus 45 degrees. The 2 waist or beam gunners have a Browning machine gun each. Their guidances are pretty good for such a position, with plus-minus 50 degrees horizontally and plus 45 degrees vertically, which is oddly better than the rear turret, but it only has minus 20 degrees in gun depression. This gun position helps out just a tiny bit, but it is mostly useless. The nose turret mirrors the rear turret with guidances, but it only has 2 Browning light machine guns compared to the rear turret's 4. On the plus side, they each have 1,200 rounds of ammo. I think the best way to survive in the Wellington is to climb to around 4,500 or 5,000 meters before you even get over the enemy bases. You can do that either by side climbing or turning back towards your friendly fighters and climb sideways behind them. Most of the time with that strategy the fighters are engaged with the enemy, forcing each other down, so 5,000 meters are a lot safer at that point. If the map is large enough you can also reach that altitude by climbing straight towards the bases. At battle rating 3.3 you can get up to 4.3 with the Wellington, and then the bomb load is not very impressive. The safest bet is just to bring the 4,000 pound bomb. With that you can destroy any base at any battle rating you will be flying in. The 9 500 pound bombs will not be able to destroy a base on certain operations map at battle rating 4.3, but the 4,000 pound bomb will. And if you get back to your airfield, you can for instance switch to the 9 500 pound bombs and go hunting for ground targets.
Allied forces have captured a zone.
Surprisingly enough, the Wellington is also effective in ground RB. You just have to play a certain way. Load up the 4000 pound bomb and just do a hit and run on whatever lights up on the ground. Just beware not to drop too close to friendlies because of the bomb's 1400 kilograms of TNT has a pretty large destructive radius. But also because of that, you are almost guaranteed a kill if you just get somewhat close to a tank. Don't hang around after though, just drop the bomb and then head back to the base right away. So in that regard, it should be played as a baby PE-8. Be still, my beating heart. At Battle Rating 4.0, we find the Halifax. The Halifax is clearly my favorite bomber and favorite heavy bomber in the British tech tree. It is furthermore the first proper heavy bomber you have access to. For its BR 4.0, the Halifax has the best bomb load of any bomber in War Thunder. Let's look at the pros and cons. Some of the pros. Bomb load. As mentioned, the Halifax bomb load is the best for its BR in the game, but more on that later. Flight characteristics. For a 4-engine bomber, the Halifax has good and pleasant handling. Top speed is over 450 km an hour at 4000 meters, so you can get to that speed without having to climb. Wing limits are 540 km an hour, which is also good. The Halifax has for a bomber high flap rip speeds with 491 and 454 km an hour for combat and takeoff flaps respectively. Landing gear and landing flaps limits are not that great with 260 km an hour. Airframe. The Halifax can take a large amount of punishment before going down. This is also the first British bomber with a decent amount of armor protection. Armament. The rear and dorsal turrets both have quad machine guns, but more on that later. And some of the cons. Armament. It's not all good though. At Battle Rating 4.0, basically all enemy fighters have larger caliber weapons, and those can reach the Halifax before the Halifax's rifle caliber guns can do any significant damage to them. One pilot. The Halifax, oddly enough, only has one pilot, no co-pilot, so a golden BB from a fighter can put the Halifax back in its hangar. Not rank 3. The largest fault with the Halifax is the rank. I think it's a shame that it sits at rank 2. If it were rank 3, it could be used for daily tasks, special tasks, and events. So this is where the party is. The minimum bomb load for the Halifax is the 15 250 pound bombs. With that bomb load, we have a total of 450 kilograms of TNT, while the largest, with the 6 500-pound bombs and the 9 1,000-pound bombs, equals 3 tons of TNT. This bomb load equals or is larger than other nations' rank 4 heavy bombers. As a bonus, the smaller 500-pound bombs drop first from their wing bomb base. The rear turret of the Halifax has good vertical guidances with -50 and +60 degrees. The -50 means that you can attack fighters below and behind you who are trying to sneak up on you. The horizontal guidances are okay, but not more than that. With its ±65 degrees, previous rear turrets had much better horizontal guidances. The dorsal turret can rotate 360 degrees and can almost shoot straight up with its +85 degrees of elevation. Because of the split tail design, the gunner has excellent visibility behind the aircraft and can, combined with the rear turret, put 8 machine guns to bear on a trailing target. This is somewhat of a letdown. The nose turret only has an older Vickers K machine gun to play with. The horizontal guidances are very bad with ±20 degrees, but the vertical guidances are good with -50 and +30 degrees. But why could they not just have added a proper turret here, or at least added a twin machine gun setup? This is really painful to look at. On a regular map, at the Halifax's own battle rating, you can destroy 3.5 bases. One thing to note here. The bomb sight shifts once you have dropped the last of the 500-pound bombs, so it's best just to drop those 6 first and then start using the 1,000-pound bombs on another base. With that approach, you avoid getting confused over the shift and end up missing with the first 1,000-pound bomb. Because of the high altitude of the bomber spawn and the speed of the Halifax, you are more often than not able to hit the bases before you're being intercepted. The good handling of the Halifax makes it possible to also use it for destroying ground targets. Because of its maneuverability, it does not have issues targeting smaller individual targets. Also in mixed battles, the Halifax can shine. With the 290 kilograms of TNT in the 1,000-pound bombs, you can comfortably stay at altitude and miss a tank and still claim a kill because of the destructive radius of the bomb.
Attack the A point! The Line forces have captured a zone. Attention to the map! Attention to the designated grid zone. Attention to the designated grid square. Attention to the designated grid zone. Attention to the map! I Thank you very much. The enemy is controlling one of the zones.
At battle rating 4.7 and 5.0, we have the Stirling heavy bomber. Okay, so here I have another issue with War Thunder. In real life, the Stirling was the first heavy bomber in the Royal Air Force service, not the Halifax. In game, it would also make, pardon the expression, a shit ton of sense to have the two bombers switch places and rank. The Halifax is a far more capable bomber than the Stirling. So why are the Stirlings at rank 3? Guardian logic at work. The differences between the two Stirling models lie in the engines and armament. The bombloads are identical, and I have to correct myself here. I said that the Hampden was the only British bomber with a ventral turret or gun position. That is not really correct. The Stirling at battle rating 4.7 also has a ventral gun position with a single Browning light machine gun, but it was removed for the battle rating 5.0 version, which I found odd. I bet there's a real world reason for it, but in game it makes the BR 5.0 version weaker. The ventral gun position has good guidances and can really protect the belly of the Stirling. So for the Stirling, I recommend you using the first Stirling instead of the battle rating 5.0 model. Let's look at some of the pros and cons. And the only pro, bombload. Although this is a step down from the Halifax, which should be higher BR than the Stirling, it is still a good bombload for the battle rating, and more about that later. And oh boy, the cons. Flight characteristics. The Stirling has a turn time of almost a full minute, not good. It can barely reach 400 km an hour in level flight, not good either. It has low rate of climb, and there's something odd happening here. The Battle Rating 5.0 Stirling has a worse rate of climb than the Battle Rating 4.7 version. But the Battle Rating 4.7 version has weaker engines, so I'm not really sure what's going on there. Instructor. The instructor has a hard time with the Stirling around 250 km an hour and slower. It keeps wanting to make corrections, making the bomber slide all over the place. It's really annoying. Armament. At this battle rating, the armament consisting of only rifle caliber machine guns really starts to be a problem with what you're up against. Landing. The Stirling requires you to land with around 150 km an hour if you want to avoid the large gear wheels bouncing you all over the place. But the low speed is close to the Stirling's stalling speed, so you need to be careful with it. But once the bouncing has stopped, you can hit the brakes and keep them on. The bomber will not nose over. Armor protection. It was clearly more important to protect the engine's oil coolers than the gunners. Only other armor protection is in the pilot's seat. The gunners have none. There's not a lot of interesting options in the bomb bay. Once you have unlocked the 9 1,000 pound bombs, which contains 2.6 tons of TNT, that is the only bomb load you should ever use. With the bomb load, you can destroy 3 bases on a regular map, or either 2 or 1 3/4 base on an operations map. The rear turret has the now familiar quad Browning light machine gun setup. Horizontal guidance is ± 85 degrees, which is good, and an equally good -45 and +60 degrees of vertical guidance. One of the differences between the Stirling models lie here with the dorsal turret. They can both rotate 360 degrees, but this turret on the Battle Rating 4.7 model can only elevate 35 degrees, which is pretty bad for a dorsal turret. While on the Battle Rating 5.0 version, it can elevate a much better +60 degrees. Another difference is this position. The ventral gun position does not exist on the Battle Rating 5.0 version, and what the hell this guy is doing, I don't want to get into. In the nose, we find 2 more Browning light machine guns. The turret has a very nice ± 90 degrees of horizontal guidance, and also good vertical guidance with -45 and +60 degrees. Because of the poor rate of climb and level speed of the Stirling, you need to play this bomber differently than a regular heavy bomber. I suggest that instead of spending 20 minutes side climbing very slowly and just end up getting shot down anyhow, to either dive towards the target in order to gain speed and surprise the enemy fighters who are busy climbing to your supposed altitude, or to turn back and hide behind your fighters and let them slug it out first. In my experience, and I'm actually surprised that it works, the first method is the way to go. It is by far the fastest and safest way to get your bombs on target. Put the Stirling in a dive so you get to around 500 km an hour, just around or below where the wings start to flap like a bird. You can catch the enemy fighters off guard by being over the target at around 3000 meters or so and with 500 km an hour. When you turn back towards your base, you will see fighters below and above you, but for some reason you have found yourself in a safe zone, altitude wise. Every single time I used this approach, it worked, and I have yet to be shot down in this manner. And that is basically the secret of how to survive in the Stirling. And one last thing, the Stirling should in no way be used in mixed battles. That would just be throwing your silver lions away. It is much too slow and sluggish to be effective in that environment. Here we have the most iconic British bomber of them all, the Lancaster. In game we have 2 variants, both at Battle Rating 5.3. I think this is a mistake, and only the second Lancaster, the Mark III, should be spaded and played. Using the first model is just a waste of your time. It is a great bomber, but you only need one. The differences between the two lie in the engines and turrets. The Mark III has a rear turret with 50 cals and slightly stronger engines. Let's look at some pros and cons. Some of the pros: bomb load. The Lancaster has so far the largest bomb load available, but more on that later. Flight characteristics. Max speed for the Lancaster is 462 km an hour at 3000 meters. So the 0.3 increase in battle rating from the late Stirling is a huge jump in performance in all regards. You still have a turn time with almost a full minute on paper, but the Lancaster definitely feels better turning than the Stirling. Wing speed limit is an impressive 600 km an hour, so you can really dive to and from a target. Flap speeds are also good with 415 and 381 km an hour for combat and takeoff flaps respectively. Landing gear and landing flap speeds are also good with 338 and 282 km an hour. Landing. The Lancaster is easy to land and it prefers to land at higher speeds with around 200 km an hour. If you become too slow, the Lancaster can become unresponsive. Armament. We finally see a turret with heavy machine guns, but more on that later. Pilots. The Lancaster has 2 pilots, so in case one of them is killed, the bomber won't be back in the hangar right away. And some of the cons. Armor protection. Again, the armor protection is a big letdown. The engines have some armor protection as well as the pilots, but none for the gunners. Armament. Although it's an upgrade with the first 50 cals for a turret, it's not nearly enough an upgrade for a battle rating 5.3 bomber. With the Lancaster we have a lot of options when it comes to bomb loads. Some are more useful than others. The best bomb load is of course the 14 1000 pound bombs. With that bomb load you're getting 4 tons of TNT, the largest amount so far. The bomb load with the 2 4000 pound bombs is coming in on a second place. Each of the bombs contains 1.4 tons of TNT. It's the same bomb the Wellington can use. The 2 4000 pound bombs can be used to quickly attack a couple of bases and then return for more. The 14 1000 pound bombs offers the largest drop of TNT and more flexibility with targets without wasting any TNT. We have to give the taxpayers as much as possible for their money. The other options can be used for carpet bombing fun, but they are not as large TNT-wise as the 14 1000 pound bombs. The most important upgrade to the Lancaster is the first bomb upgrade. That makes you able to carry the 14 1000 pound bombs. Ah yes, finally we have a turret with heavy machine guns, and it's a pretty good turret. The horizontal guidance is plus minus 70 degrees, and that is pretty good, but it could have been better. Vertical guidances are minus 45 degrees, which is good, but at plus 30 degrees is pretty bad. And now you have 2500 rounds of American freedom for each of the 50 cals. The dorsal turret is armed with the now much too familiar 7.7mm Brownings. It can rotate 360 degrees, and the vertical guidances is a very nice and rarely seen minus 10 degrees for a dorsal turret, but an okay, but could be better, plus 60 degrees of elevation. An additional plus for the dorsal turret is the tail split design, which means you can really help out the tail gunner with putting guns on target. In the nose we have more light Brownings. Horizontal guidance is not the best with plus minus 60 degrees, but the vertical guidance is then very impressive minus 60 and then meh plus 30 degrees. Most of the time you will end up on operations maps with the Lancaster. Around your own battle rating it takes 5 1000 pound bombs to destroy a base. So with its bomb load you can sort of destroy 2.5 bases. In up tiers a base requires 7 bombs, so in that case you can destroy 2 bases. With the Lancaster you can use the full range of options to approach the target. You can either just head straight for the target, either in a climb or level flight. You can side climb and go to space, dive towards the target, or turn around for fighter cover and see what happens. The Lancaster, with its speed and OK rate of climb with 8.6 meters a second, allows you to take your pick. I would in general not use it for mixed battles though. But I guess it could be fun to carpet bomb with the 14 1000 pound bombs or drop the 2 4000 pound bombs on a cluster of tanks. You can do it, but the Lancaster is in my opinion too large and not responsive enough. Besides, mixed battles are swarming with fighters who have large caliber guns and cannons, and on the ground we have very effective SBAGs as well. But no matter what, it's a great bomber for the battle rating. Until a few months back, the Lincoln was the British top dog prop bomber. It has since been dethroned, but is still a good bomber. It sits at battle rating 6.0 and brings bigger guns and more speed to the table, but not more in the bomb bay, sadly. Let's look at some of the pros and cons. Some of the pros: flight characteristics. The Lincoln behaves good for a large bomber. It also turns much better than the Stirling and Lancaster with only 35 seconds. It is also faster than the Lancaster with now 512 km an hour at around 6000 meters. So here we see something different from the Lancaster's 3000 meters for its top speed. Wing limits are just over 600 km an hour, so here's a decent chance for you to escape in a dive. All flap speeds are good with 406, 388 and 296 km an hour for combat, takeoff and landing flaps respectively. Even the landing gear speed is high with 341 km an hour, so you can lower the gear to further reduce your landing speed early on. Armament. Finally, but very late, we here have the addition of a turret with 20mm cannons, but more on that later. Landing. Although it takes time for the Lincoln to descend from the heavens, it behaves good and is easy to land as long as you don't force it. And some of the cons. Bomb load. The max amount of TNT is still the same as with the Lancaster, and I find that disappointing. Pilot. Oddly enough, the Lincoln is back to having only one pilot, so a good hit to the cockpit and you're back in the hangar. And something odd here. The stat sheet says that the Lincoln has 7 crew members, but only 4 are visible on the X-ray. So maybe the Lincoln has 2 pilots, but it's bugged out and you can't see him. Expensive. The Lincoln costs 24,000 silver lines to lose. That is more than twice as expensive as the Lancaster. For some it's not a big deal, but for a player without a premium account running, it is something that needs to be considered before taking the Lincoln out for a spin. Rate of climb. The Lincoln can only climb 5 meters a second with a full bomb load, and you needing altitude to be somewhat safe makes it pretty annoying to get up there. The bomb bay is looking rather anemic. The Lincoln has no increase in TNT. It is the same as on the Lancaster with 14 1000 pound bombs. And at battle rating 6.0 I had hoped for something better. It cannot carry the large 4000 pound bomb either. So yeah, disappointing. The rear turret has 2 Browning heavy machine guns. Horizontal guidance is a very good ±90 degrees, so an upgrade from the Lancaster. The vertical guidances are also an upgrade with plus minus 45 degrees. Ah yes, here we have the dorsal turret with twin 20mm cannons. First for Britain, you go. Just too goddamn late, people. The turret can rotate 360 degrees and the horizontal guidance is 0 and plus 40, which is not the greatest. The build of choice is the universal build, just like on all the other guns. You also have access to an AP build, but the only difference is that the AP build has 2 AP and 1 HC shell, while the universal build has 2 HE and 1 AP shell. You have 350 shells for each cannon. That may not sound like a lot, but one shell is enough to rip the wing off a fighter. The Lincoln has a new designed nose turret. Here, finally, we also find Browning heavy machine guns. Horizontal guidances are sadly pretty bad with plus minus 40 degrees. The minus 30 degrees for the vertical guidance is not very impressive, but the plus 45 degrees is. I guess the designers decided that it would not be used very much, because you only have 275 rounds for each gun. Around the Lincoln's own battle rating and in up tiers, you need 5 or 7 1000 pound bombs on an operations map to destroy a base. If I am in doubt, I usually start off with 3 bombs to test it out and see the results, and then continue from there. In down tiers, 3 1000 pound bombs are enough to destroy a base, and in that case you can, as with the Lancaster, destroy 4 bases and put the rest on the airfield if it is a normal map. As you can see, the Lincoln has very large wings for high altitude performance, and that is where it belongs. But at this battle rating there's a good chance for up tiers, and of course that means that you can face early jets and specialized high altitude fighters. Alternatively, you can with the high wing limits try to dive towards a base. But with the speed the fighters have at battle rating 6.0, it is not nearly as successful an approach as with the Stirling. On the other hand, when returning from a dive attack, you do not have to worry about you not having a ventral turret, and your new and shiny 20mm cannons might come into play. The stock bomb load is awful, with only 14 250 pound bombs, which equals to about 420 kilograms of TNT. So if you run into a bunch of bad matches and get shot down, it will take you a while to get things unlocked, and it can get expensive. With the direct fire update in September 2021, we got a new top prop bomber for the British, the Shackleton. This bomber is not a World War II design, but was a long-range maritime patrol bomber which entered British service in 1951. It shares the battle rating 6.0 with the Lincoln. Let's look at some of the pros and cons. Some of the pros: flight characteristics. Top speed is basically the same as the Lincoln with 514 km an hour, but instead of reaching it at 6,000 meters, the Shackleton does it at 3,000 meters. It also turns better than the Lincoln with 30 seconds, and it is much more responsive and nimble in everything it does. Rate of climb is also good with 10 meters a second. Flap speeds are excellent with 420, 404, and 301 km an hour for combat, takeoff, and landing flaps respectively. Bomb load. Also here we have an improvement over the Lancaster and Lincoln, and more on that in a bit. Radar. Although not functional right now, the Shackleton has a radar built in under the fuselage. It automatically extends right after takeoff and retracts when you lower the landing gear. I just wish there was an option so you could retract it by yourself. It serves no purpose right now, and with its large size, it causes parasitic drag. Armament. The Shackleton has turrets with 20mm cannons. Gone are the light and heavy machine guns. And some of the cons: expensive. If you lose the Shackleton after your free repairs, it costs you 35,000 silver lines. So it's about 30% more expensive than the Lincoln. But you do get much better flight performance and more possibilities for the Shackleton, so it's up to you if you think it's worth it. Armament. Although only seeing 20mm cannons is great, the Shackleton lacks rear and ventral turrets. You only have the dorsal and nose turrets, so you are defenseless against fighters attacking from behind and below. Bomb load. As of right now, the Shackleton is missing some options compared to its real-life counterpart. The Shackleton is the new king or queen of TNT for the British. It can maximum drop 4.4 tons of TNT. Instead of the 14 1,000 pound bombs the Lancaster and Lincoln can drop, it can carry 15. There's also something very unusual. The Shackleton can also use RP-3 rockets. That is a testament of the Shackleton being a low altitude performer. But there is a but. There always is, and everybody has one. Currently, the rocket reticle does not really work. When you zoom in, you can just see the reticle at the very top of the screen, making the use of the rockets pretty much impossible. It has been like this since September when the Shackleton was introduced. Not good. You can also use the Shackleton for carpet bombing with the 25 500 pound bombs. That bomb load, however, contains much less TNT than the largest bomb load. In real life, the Shackleton was also able to carry sea mines and torpedoes, weapons that are both in-game, and it would be nice to see them added. The cannons here are the same as on the Lincoln. The guidances, however, are better. You can of course rotate the turret 360 degrees, and vertically it has received a boost compared to the Lincoln. Here you have -10 degrees, so you can aim along the back of the fuselage and depress along the sides. Elevation is okay but not good with +45 degrees. In the nose we find another set of 20mm cannons. The horizontal guidance is bloody awful with only +7 degrees, making it almost useless. Vertical guidance is great with -50 degrees, but again bloody awful +6 degrees. So you have to point the Shackleton more or less directly at the target before you can use the turret, and it is simply not worth it. It means that the turret was designed for offensive use against shipping and not as defense. So all taking in consideration, you basically only have the dorsal turret for defense. Depending on the map, at battle rating 6.0 you either need 5 or 7 1000 pound bombs to destroy a base. This way you can most of the time destroy 3 bases with the Shackleton's 15 bombs. With the Shackleton you have all options open for you. You can use it as a high altitude bomber, medium or low altitude bomber. Max speed is found at 3000 meters, so it performs best at lower altitudes. With its wing speed limit close to 600 km an hour, you can more often than not deliver your bombs while diving towards the bases and get away with it. A reason why this often works is that most fighters will be climbing like crazy to reach 5 or 6k altitude. If you make it back to base, you can with your next trip destroy ground targets. There is a lot of points to be gained with destroying bunkers and tanks, and it will help you quickly deduce enemy tickets. The Shackleton of course also works in mixed battles, and it is definitely maneuverable enough to survive, but clearly lacks the rear and ventral turrets for defense. I would still stick to altitude and use it as a high altitude bomber here. Being low to protect your belly against fighters serves no purpose since the ground will be full of barrels pointing your way and you're not exactly a small target. So if you have deep pockets and spawn in at just the right time, you can with your 15 1000 pound bombs really mess up the enemy team. So the Shackleton is most definitely the new king or queen of heavy bombers for the British, but it does really suffer defensively. These are my recommendations for the British bombers. Swordfish. Although slow and quirky, the Swordfish can carry a good bomb load and is recommended for mixed battles but not air battles. Hampden. The Hampden has for the battle rating very good bomb load and is great for both air and mixed battles. Skip the first Hampden and use the second model. Sunderland. The Sunderland is fun as a gunship and can be useful in naval battles, but for a bomber it's almost useless, so I would skip it. Wellington. I would recommend the very first Wellington because of its, for the battle rating, great bomb load. Skip the other two and also spade and use the last at battle rating 3.3. Halifax. The Halifax is hands down the best bomber in the British tech tree. Spade it and play the hell out of it. Stirling. Just research, but do not use the Stirlings. They are so not worth it. Just use the Halifax until you unlock the Lancaster. Lancaster. Since both are at battle rating 5.3, there's no reason to spade the first model, just research it, but spade and use the second, the Mark III. Lincoln. Although the Lincoln is faster and better at high altitudes, you can easily skip it since it offers no advantages over the Lancaster bomb-wise. Shackleton. The Shackleton is great as far as a pure bomber goes. It suffers greatly defensively though. If you want the best performing bomber, use it. Just keep in mind, it costs 35,000 silver lines once the free repairs are used up. That was it for the guide. If you like the video and the content on the channel in general, do me a favor and subscribe, like and comment. If you want to support the channel in a more direct way, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for watching, and until next time, remember to deploy your dial brakes. Have a good one.